Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming out to the Big Apple Film Festival tonight. It's our first night of panel discussions, and we're discussing about different aspects about the film industry, production, finance, distribution, and so forth. One of the films we premiered tonight is called The Bathroom on Drake. It's directed by Adam Sorota. He's right here. It's produced by Richard LeMay, and stars Jerry Springer. So we're talking tonight, the title of this panel is The Art of the Short Film. So we're going to talk about short films, how they're made, how they're distributed, and so forth. So first, let me ask each of the speakers to introduce themselves, tell you a little about themselves and how they got this project together. So why don't we start with the director, Adam? Oh, is that on?
Hello?
He's the sound director.
Yeah. Like I said a little bit, if you watch the short, I wanted to do a short film, and I really wanted to direct a comedy, and found the script through my friend Diane, and I really liked the script, and I teamed up with Richard and our executive producer Avery, and we, really wanted to make it a period piece, and we must have talked about it for almost a year, and then stopped talking about it, and then talked about it again. And then I've worked with Jerry for almost 20 years. And I called him up and I said, you want to be the grandpa in a short film I'm doing? And he ended up saying yes. And then we got this wonderful cast. And the movie is the most creative thing I've ever done. I'm a multicam director for NBC. I've worked for them since 1998, and I direct talk shows and concerts and news, and this film sucked the creative life out of me. I never thought, first thing, you got to move the camera every time you want to have a different shot or a different lens, and I'm used to just cutting 7, 8, 10 cameras. So the end of my story is that at the end of the day, I think the film is wonderful. We had a wonderful team that we put together, and it was really the most creative thing ever that I've ever done. And my takeaway is everybody kept asking me questions and it was super hard to kind of get focused, but with my great AD team and all the people that Richard brought to support me and wonderful actors, Jerry and the rest of the cast, was really amazing for me, a great experience.
What's the question again?
Just introduce yourselves, a little bit about your career and your yeah, that was just the intro.
I'm Richard LeMay. I'm the producer. I know Adam. We have dogs, and if you live in New York City and you have a dog, then it's a pretty tight community. So that's how we got to talking about this, and the rest is history.
Okay.
I'm Jerry Springer. I'm a judge. Adam and I have been together for, as he said, close to 20 years, and I don't know anything about making a movie. And when he called and said, "Would you play a grandfather?" That is such a stretch for me. It's the only role in life, actually, that I know how to play because I play it every day, and so I don't know how to act, and maybe learn your lines and just be yourself in that situation, and maybe that works. So I don't know. I can't take. I thought it was really a really good movie, but I can take absolutely no credit because I just did what they told me, and the first thing they said was run into a door. Well, thanks a lot. And so it was great fun to do, and just to watch how they make a movie or how you guys make movies, because you're in this industry. So I don't want to pretend to offer any advice. I'm the new kid on the block, and at 76, it's tough to be the new kid, So I'm glad I finally got into a movie. When are the Academy Awards?
Yesterday.
They were yesterday.
Story of my life. A day late and $1 short.
So, Adam, can you tell us a little bit how you came up with this concept, what attracted you to the script, I should say, to begin with? What made you want to get into this project?
Well, I said this a little bit in the theater. My associate director, Diane Slay, it's funny because on Tuesday morning, she picks me up because she lives near me, and we drive to Stamford, Connecticut, where we shoot our shows. And Diane and I kept talking about, I said I want to do a film, I want to do scripted television. I love what I do for NBC, but I want to kind of change it up. And then we were in a production office waiting to have a meeting, and Diane said, I know this guy, Mark Lesser. He's like an artist and a writer, and he's actually a psychiatrist too. I said, okay, well, we all could use that. And he has this script. And I said, great. And so she connected us, and I called Mark, or I emailed Mark, and he sent me the script with no NDA, so I could have just stolen it, but we didn't. And I don't know, it just kind of happened, and I thought, you know what, for my first film, I would like to do comedy, because Richard and I had so many talks about directing, and he kept telling me I need to work with actors and learn to work with actors, and I just thought, well, comedy for me may be an easier genre or maybe a harder, I really wasn't sure. And then visually, I thought that I could shoot a period piece and make it look really, really good, which was important to me. And so then we talked about it, and then we kind of sat with it, and I let it go for a few months, and then we made the movie.
I was kind of an observer to it because I had nothing to do with it except to show up and play the role or be that person. But what I loved about it, just as a viewer or an observer of it, is it's a slice. Everyone's got a story. In everyone's life, if you just say, remember the time, and everyone's got to remember the time of something when they were younger, and it was maybe a 5-minute episode, but you remember that little story. Everyone can relate to it. If everyone had to write down, starting with a line, remember the time, something about you and your family, some funny thing that happened, some ridiculous thing that happened, and everyone, so there was a warmth to the movie. That's what I loved the mom.
Yeah, is Denise here?
She was.
She was great.
Where is she? She was superb. When I grew up, I knew 500 of her. That's what I really enjoyed about the movie. That it was just a nice remember when, and then you slip in your own story.
Richard, as an independent filmmaker, so you've done feature films. And is this your first short? Or you've done short films before as well?
This is my first short. I've produced 8 features.
Okay, so how is the experience with a short film different, and also how are the goals with a short film different?
Well, I think ultimately when you're making a feature, the goal is you got to sell it. You got to make your money back for your investors. This was 3 days of condensed work, and I don't know if you're thinking about in terms of selling. It's really about making the best possible project you can. And we were really fortunate. So we had so many great people, the crew, and this guy's being very self-deprecating, but he's a class act. He showed up, everyone loved him. He worked as hard as anybody on set, and I think his performance was pretty damn good too. Yeah.
And I'll add, there were no stuntmen. He actually hit the door. And I kept saying, Kerry Shannon, who's the executive producer of Judge Jerry, I kept saying to myself, if I hurt him, I'm going to be in so much trouble. Because you really hit that door very, very hard.
But you hit it with your hand. I mean, how old do I look? You really were, honestly, God love him, but he was so concerned that just running up, a 10-year-old knows how to do that trick. You run up and you slap the door and you make a noise. You go, ah! And they were going to get a stunt double?
He hit it hard, but we had padding. So.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You were going to give me padding.
You did get padding.
And I just want to ask a question, again, Richard and Adam as well. What would you say is the market like right now for short films? I think there was a time when there wasn't much of a market for it. It was more of a calling card. But would you say there is a market now for short films through Amazon, Hulu, et cetera, all these type of online platforms, YouTube even?
I see them, but I don't really know. Like I said, this is my first short. I don't know what the market is.
So we've done a lot of research, and Avery, is Avery here? I don't know. I think he's wandering around looking for this floor. But so he and I have done a lot of research on this. Shorts are hard to sell. There's really not, sometimes HBO, Mark was telling me like Jeffrey Katzenberg or somebody is trying to start a short network, or once in a while Netflix will take one. But I have to tell you, this short was very expensive. Per minute, this short was the same money as like a big budget feature. And there's no financial upside to these kinds of movies. What we're hoping is that we get into wonderful film festivals like this, and we wanted to make a film, and it's really for the art. And, we were very, lucky to have Avery, who, and actually my dad is Ron Simons. They kind of financed it and helped us with it. And, we're hoping to have it be one of the festivals that are Oscar qualifying, maybe, who knows? Because if you didn't know this, and that's why Netflix bought the Paris Theater, and they also bought a theater in LA, if you don't air a movie, whether it's a minute or 5 hours, if you don't show it for a certain amount of days in New York or LA, you don't qualify for the Oscars. They won't even accept you.
Oh, thank God I qualify.
But if you win at an Oscar qualifying festival, they give you a waiver. Not to get nominated, but just like they'll look at your movie. So I think from a business sense, I really don't think that there's a market currently to sell shorts. I think there should be. I think that, Jonathan is very generous having us here and featuring us. But, the short block one tonight sold out completely. So people will go to the movies to see a short. And like I said, my partner, Avery Seavey, who really was very helpful in our financing and, put up a lot of the money and helped me with Richard, who did all the budgets and would say, we're over. And, one thing just like, we had to hire people for thousands of dollars called the Coen Brothers, twins that coned the streets. So I could do one outdoor scene that was literally 15 seconds. And then when Richard came up to us and Avery and said, 2 cars are still here, so you need to pay $500 for a tow truck to move it down the street. So my point to this story is that shorts are very expensive. You need people, especially a period short with actors, and we did at SAG and all of that stuff. You need to have somebody to finance it that knows that there's no financial upside to it. And to answer the end of your question is, there really is no place to show these things. So,
Okay.
I don't know.
All right, and I'm going to let the audience ask questions just one second. I just want to ask one last question to Jerry. How is this experience acting in a narrative film compare to the work that you've done throughout your career as a host? And is it similar in certain ways?
I don't know if I can compare it because I've never really had to play somebody other than myself. So I can't pretend to say, well, being an actor, because even the role I played in this short was really me. That's the way I talk. When I talk to my grandson, I kind of crouch down. It's everything I've done on television, I'm always me. So there's no talent involved in what I do on television. It's just they hand me a microphone and when we did for 27 years our crazy show, and people were trying to give me a compliment by saying, "We know that's not really you." Well, no, that really was me. I mean, I wasn't, cursing or fighting or throwing mud or Jello or anything, but it's how I react in that situation. So I've never, whatever show I've ever been on, whether it's America's Got Talent, Dancing with the Stars, it's always me. So I don't know. I wasn't, being falsely modest and saying, well, I don't know how to act. I really don't. If you came to me to play some other role, except a male dancer, that's right up my alley. But other than that, I don't have a clue. So that's the answer to your question. I only know how to be me because I've been it for 76 years now.
And he's a judge now, if you didn't know. Season 2 coming up.
My wife said, and then I'll shut up. My wife said when I got the job, we've been married 46 years, and Mickey said, honey, this is the first time I've ever seen the words Jerry Springer and honorable in the same sentence.
Adam, sorry, one last question for you, then the audience, I'll open up for questions. So you're a director for NBC, direct television. How is that different? And I think you discussed this a little bit in the beginning. How is that different than directing a short film?
I mean, it's not even close to being the same. It's when you direct a multicam show, you have a lighting director. They set up the lighting. You have a set that really the executive producer decides on, and really, my job is just to take the set that other people have decided is good and the lighting that somebody else wants, and kind of just take 6 or 7 cameras and just capture whatever's going on, whether it's a judge, whether it's a music concert, and you kind of just, a television director doing multicam, we have some input, but overall it's our job. I shoot 130 shows in a season, and you have to just make sure that you capture everything, and because really they're going to re-edit the whole thing in post, and you just have to make sure that there's a show there. Whereas for a film, I can't get my head around how the feature people do it. But for this short, like Rich will tell you, it drained me creatively. If I had a wide shot and I said to Paul, I want a close-up, well, it took like 25 minutes to put a new lens on and change the lighting. And whereas on a talk show, I can just cut everything and capture it. So really, that was the main thing, is all the time, all the planning. Victor, my AD, was like, you need a shot sheet. I'm like, what is that? I didn't know any of this. So between Richard and Victor and Mark was a good help. He knew a lot about this. I had a lot of people around me that kind of taught me how to direct a film. And then when I was on set, I kind of just did my thing, which, I have a bunch of my crew here from my talk shows, and they know that I like telling everybody what to do. So it was great because I was now the boss. I didn't have to ask anybody permission. I just kind of did my thing. So that was really good, but really it was very different for me. And without this great crew of about 45 people, I would have never pulled it off. It was really about all of them. So.
All right, so does anybody have any questions? Let's open it up to the audience. Questions? Feel free to raise your hand. Anyone at all? Anyone? All right, right up front. Go ahead.
This is your first film. Is it going to be your last? Are you more features, maybe?
First film or last film? Both.
Well, Avery and I have created a company called A2 Films, and we're looking at scripts, and I've asked Mark to write a feature based on all of our characters. And I got the first draft a few days ago, and we've talked to Richard. Richard's a very successful director. He's done some pretty good horror films. So yeah, I would like to do a feature film. I'm also trying to direct some scripted television for NBC, so I'm trying to see about doing that also.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
So, someone who just directed my first short, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that, oh my gosh, the camera this, the shot was that. But, there was a part, based on my experiences, where I felt as the director that I really felt, and I acted in it too, but that I felt really grounded. So was there some area, as the director, with all this other stuff going on, the camera, the craft service, all the, but where did you find a place where you found your zone, your lane, where like everything else goes away, you can just like jam in on your actors?
I think driving home with Rich at the end of each day. I don't know that I was grounded at all. It was really a blur. I just kind of did my thing. I didn't even really stand in Video Village. I stood next to the focus puller, this guy Castle. He was really cool. And I kind of just stood there and watched. And then I really didn't even listen on headphones. I was just kind of watching the actors. And that was the thing for me. I wanted to make sure, because Richard had put together a great team visually. So for me, I really had to listen to the actors and kind of watch their performances, and I was thinking about the edit, like how it was going to cut together. And there's something that I remembered in some of the footage, because Richard had just told me that our boy Adrian was going to leave in 20 minutes when I didn't really finish his scene. So I got a little distracted, and then Victor was like, don't worry, we have a plan. And I read from the Rod script, and Jerry came over and said, we're doing this movie. So that was one time that I just had to pull myself together. But for me, the best part was working with the actors, because I felt that they gave a really good performance.
Let me piggyback on that. From outside looking in on his process, he walked into it with a really clear visual, and that's not always the case, I find, for most people. He really had a pretty solid handle on how he wanted to see things, the movement, the lenses, everything. So I think, outside looking in, that looked like your lane to me. Like you really knew what you were doing in that regard.
Yeah, it was visually, it was what everything I wanted. I think it's and Paul Nichols, our DP, it's a beautifully lit and shot film. Very nice.
Yeah, in the back.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank God I admitted this to Rich, but oh my God, the hearing aid. Rich had me order it, and I put it in a place I never put anything. And we got to set the second day when Jerry was coming, and I turned to Rich and I said, or maybe it was the first day, whenever, I don't know where the hearing is. I'm sure I gave it to you, Rich. Where is it? And he was like,
He's like, I gave it to you.
I gave it to you.
I gave it to you on this day at this time. And I was like, I don't have any record.
right, and it was in Avery's office. I was like, remember we were in Avery's office? We're talking Nikki, the wardrobe person. And so then Emmeline, the art director, found another one in Queens. And after Rich had gone to my apartment, my 20-year-old son was sleeping, woke him up, scared the shit out of him that the strange man's in my apartment. And then we found it, and then about maybe 2 months later, we were talking about the music, and Rich was over, and I said, I got to admit something. I found the hearing aid.
When I showed up the first day and I was walking into the house, I don't remember who, but it was an older gentleman wearing this hearing aid. And he said, and he starts talking to me and saying, this is the finest hearing aid money can buy. And what's he talking to me? I said, well, what kind is it? He said, 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
I worked it in.
Yeah. Yes.
The color was absolutely stunning, and that yellow and green house, that image just remains in my brain. But throughout the whole film, the color was so beautiful. It sounds like you had a vision for them. How did you make the colors so rich?
Well, it's called a LUT, which I still don't know what that means, but it's really Paul Nichols, and Gavin Rosenberg was our colorist. The film wasn't treated. That's how it really looked, and every night Paul would go home on his computer, and I guess a LUT is some codes that tells the computer what to do, and make how it's going to look. And every night he would send me screenshots, and that's how it looked. And when I watch a lot of films. I read how directors direct, some of the best. I really did look in the mirror, and my girlfriend Erin will tell you it was like crazy. I was saying action, action, like because TV directors, we don't say action. The AD counts, and a stage manager cues them, and you go. But so for the color part, Paul was really, really passionate about the way he wanted it shot. And when Richard introduced us, that's why we jived, because it's exactly how I wanted it to look. And I wanted it to look like it was shot in 1968. And while Richard said that was my main guide through the whole thing, I really wanted to give it that look with a big jib and dollies and no steady cams. And then Gavin Rosenberg, who did all the color, I think he hit it out of the park. And Paul agreed because he really liked how he colored the film for us. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Go ahead. Yes.
Question in terms of how do you, because you're saying that short films don't necessarily make their money back and if they're not an investment, but how do you tell your investors that, hey, you're investing in this project, but you may not make your funds back?
You have to say that even on a feature.
Yeah, you can't. There's no guarantee of making money. And Avery, who was my main investor, knew going into it. And I told him there's zero financial upside, but there is 0.00001% that you may win an Oscar. So like for us, honestly, it was really just the experience, and we all wanted to make a film, and Avery and I and Richard, we've talked about it really in depth. I don't see that this film will ever even come close to making, even if a Netflix bought it, there's really no market for it. And I think that there should be, because I think shorts are great. And again, Jonathan has proved that he sells out the short festivals, because a lot of people, maybe we're just New Yorkers, because this is a New York film, maybe we like festivals, but then I go on Film Freeway, and there's hundreds and hundreds of short film festivals. Now, definitely the film festivals make money, but all of us, there's thousands, and just to give you an example, Tribeca had 6,000 entries for their short category. So there are 6,000 films entering one festival in New York. And it goes from a $150,000 movie to a $10,000 student film. And let me tell you, they're all good. But again, we couldn't find, unless Richard knows more, we couldn't find any upside financially for this film.
But what I was saying before, even when you do a feature, like the first thing you see on that contract when someone's giving you money is you're probably going to lose all your money. And you have to be really upfront about that, because a film it's like rolling the dice, So it is a risky business.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm producing all my projects myself. So I'm curious, what's the hardest thing about producing?
Most difficult thing about producing?
I don't know. I think you just have to have the mindset that you're supporting someone else's vision. And I think the rest is really just putting the pieces together. So I don't know. I think producing a film on it, whether it's a short or I think this film almost killed me. I was feeling like I was an old man. But I've produced 8 features, and I just feel like it's just a condensed version of a feature, And I think at the end of the day, it's a monumental task to put all those pieces together. I always say making a film is like making a jigsaw puzzle, but you have to make all the pieces first, and then you're hoping that they fit together at some point. So every day is a shit fight, and you just have to kind of keep your head on straight and move forward, and that's producing,
Yeah, but he's being, he's not really saying what he really did, because Rich, you know, at the end of the day, how to clean the house. You know, it's a short film, supposed to be low budget. It's like middle right now, but still going. You know, when you get somebody like Richard to produce a film, I think the director's important, but the producer's more important in my eyes because he made it happen. He made the picture cars show up. He made the catering show up for the crew that was really hungry. You know, he got all the interns to work. He helped me with the editing. He's a little passionate. I would get an email, don't be offended. I hate the editing. I just shut the movie off. Or don't be offended, but I'm really sick because the music was so horrible. So those are the emails I got from him. But you know what? You want a producer like this? Because on a movie, a director is the boss. But if you don't have a strong producer say, listen, dude, you're really screwing this up, or, you know, while I was up there making whatever magic there is, he's down there making sure the catering's done, making sure the car services are there. So the producer, to me, is the number one. If you're going to do a short film, you have to have a good producer, hands down.
Thank you.
I think, I'm just blue skying here, particularly among young people, you know, they're watching everything that's short on their phones, on streaming, and I don't even know the proper language. It would just, and I see public television, for example, having all these fundraisers to continue this program, which doesn't have sponsors, and yet they raise the money for it. I just wonder if there isn't a streaming service or where it's all about short films and people know they can go there if they've got 6 minutes, 10 minutes, they can watch a movie, and if you figure out a way to have national fundraisers and, you know, really push, the financing will come because there are enough, particularly in this generation, there are enough artistic people and people that aren't just the business types that really want to support this and probably would get behind it and get excited about it. You would have universities involved in it, the art schools that are part of the universities. I think if you just made it a national campaign for the creative arts, and this would be, let's say, short films, you would find a platform. People are always looking for content, and if public television can raise money, which is far more expensive, I don't see why you couldn't raise money for your short films.
Okay. Any other questions? Adam, I just want to ask you, did you always want to do a period piece? Or was it that the script came to you and this was your first interest in doing a period piece?
No, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but when I read the script, I just thought it would be a good way to do a period piece, because that's what I know as a director, is the visuals. So that's kind of why we picked that.
Could we not call 1968 a period piece?
We have just a couple minutes left.
Like the Civil War. Yeah, let's do that. Man, I remember the 60s.
We have just a couple minutes left. Any last questions? Yes, in the back.
Do you guys think it's because it's a short film compared to a feature film that it's just everything's so much more intense and important, and every second is so much more vital as compared to a bigger film?
I don't think so. I think it has to be that intense and that vital every day. Whether it's, I think the difference is you have arcs in a feature that you don't have necessarily in a short film, thematically. So it really is, no matter what, whether it's a day of shooting or it's, 30 days of shooting, it's intense and outrageous. And even if it's one day, it's going to be a pretty intense day, So I think it's all the same. It should be, at least.
Okay. One last question. All right, so I'm actually going to sum this up then. If each of you can just give one piece of advice for somebody looking to make a short film from what you've all learned from this process, what would that piece of advice be? So I guess we'll start with Jerry.
Marry rich or find a rich friend.
I say shoot something. We're living in a digital age. You have iPhones. There are movies being made on iPhones. You have every device has editing software. If you want to tell a story, then you should tell the story any way you have to, because technology's in your hand. It may not look the way you want it to, but you'll learn a hell of a lot, I'm sure of that.
I'm not really sure. I kind of want to go both of them because for me, being an experienced television director, I don't know that I would have want to shot it on an iPhone. And to do it, if I was going to do a movie, I want to do it the way that I did it. And, because I found some people that want to do it with me financially, I think that's why it made it work. So.
Okay. All right. Well, congratulations
Thank you.
For the premiere of A Bathroom on Drake, directed by Adam Sorota, produced by Richard LeMay, starring Jerry Springer. Thank you all for being here. Thank you.